Hi, I'm Ada Bobineau, and I'm the founder and director of the San Antonio Black International Film Festival. And we are so glad that you tuned in to see Revolution from Afar. This is a very important film and very important topic on Sudan. And we are going to get started with a special guest for our post discussion. I'd like to first bring in and welcome Imwiza Matali. He is well known in the Washington, D.C. area and beyond now, because we talking podcast now. So his project is Africa World Now Project. And you can check that out as an educational program that merges theory with practice through an active agenda, talking about the events happening on the continent. So often we don't get the news about what's happening on the continent, and so we give you great kudos for the activism that you do in getting the communication across.
Oh, thank you very much.
The music as well.
Oh, thanks a lot. Thank you.
So I'm going to go ahead and have Imwiza bring on our special guest. Revolution from Afar is by Bentley Brown. He is traveling right now, but we do have two awesome activists and spoken word artists from the film. And so I'm going to get out the way and let you all have a wonderful discussion, bringing up information that we need to know about Sudan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ada. And it's a delight to be part of this presentation, Africa World Now Project and San Antonio Black International Film Festival. And I also want to acknowledge my colleague, James Pope, and he's here in spirit. And we work on issues all over the African world, not just limited to the African continent. But just before we go, I wanted to acknowledge and introduce our special guests who are in the film that you just watched. These are spoken word artists. First is Khadija Muhammad, who is a spoken word artist, and she's currently a student at Wayne State University pursuing a bachelor's degree in political science. Khadija, welcome to the program. And then
thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Sorry. Thanks. And we also have Bahadia Muhammad Osman. She's also a spoken word artist and a student pursuing master's in public health, working with children with disabilities. Again, thank you for being on the program, Bahadia.
Thank you again for having me.
Thanks. First, I wanted to as we get into the weeds and nuts and bolts of this film, if you could talk to us about the process, describing the process of how this film came together with the director, Bentley Brown, who himself is not Sudanese, but how did he get connected with all of the artists who are of Sudanese heritage to be involved and to be part of this process? I don't know who wants to start. I can have Khadija start.
Khadijah's having a little bit of problems with her audio.
Okay, so probably we'll start with Bahadia.
Yeah, I can hop on in. So Bentley has been known in our Sudanese community for a very long time. He's lived in Sudan, contributed so much to the art scene, to the activism scene. Bentley has spent a lot of his life in Sudan and in Chad, so that's how a lot of us connected with him. Mm-hmm. So as soon as the revolution came together, it didn't matter whether you're Sudanese, whether you're from the diaspora, or whether you're an ally. You know, a lot of people came together for the movement, for the Sudanese revolution, where the Sudanese dictator of 30 years was overthrown. Mm-hmm. So I connected with Bentley at an event. It was a Khalid al-Bay event. He's an artist, political cartoonist. And, you know, Bentley talked to me after I had a performance and just said, hey, I'm doing a documentary about the revolution. Can I meet you at a conference we were having in Denver? Can I shoot you? Can we have a conversation about how you're feeling? And it was such an organic process. And he was just holding the camera up as everything was, you know,
unfolding. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And the cartoonist you mentioned, he's also in the film as well.
Yeah, Khalid al-Bay. Yeah.
Khalid, yeah.
Yeah. Bentley really was just kind of taking his camera and where the conversation was, finding the conversation, finding the artists really that was involved in the revolution. And So yeah.
And I don't know, Khadija, I want if you can chime in. I hope the audio is working now.
I can
I think
just figuring that out. I can hop on in.
I think we're still having the audio difficulties.
Yeah, so but I can just briefly touch up on Khadija's involvement. She was also at the conference in Denver, and I just really kind of grabbed her. I said, Khadija, we need another woman artist on the channel. Your opinions and your perspective is priceless. Come now. So that's how this process was just so organic.
Yeah. And this was the Sudanese-American Association. Yes. So this is an annual event. It's not that it wasn't because of the film that the conference happened. This is an annual event that takes place. If you could give us a little bit of background of that conference itself too. What is it? The Sudanese diaspora community, not just the younger generation, but also the older generation involved in this conference?
Khadija, do you want to chime in on that one?
Sure. I apologize. I'm having a lot of technical difficulties. But just about the SAPA convention, it's the Sudanese-American. I'm not sure what it stands for, but can you help me with that? I don't recall what
Professional
it stands
Association,
for.
something along those
Yes.
lines.
So it's an annual conference and gathering of Sudanese people around the United States. So that was actually my first time joining the convention in Denver. And like Bayadr said, I really wasn't sure what to expect. And, I'm in Michigan and we have a lot of Sudanese people, but we're kind of dispersed. So I haven't seen like a lot of Sudanese people in one place since I left Sudan. So it's very heartwarming to like see a lot of Sudani people my age who share similar passions and interests, and connecting with them there. And Bayadr just came and grabbed me. I didn't know what was going on. Never met Bentley. Didn't meet half of the people that were there, except like on Instagram. So most of the people that I knew who were a part of this film, that was basically our first time actually connecting in person for me. So it was really awesome, and it was a great conversation.
Oh, by the way, Odyssey, who's in the film, my colleague interviewed him. And I'll send you the link of that
awesome.
That conversation. This was a couple months ago, and we're talking about art and history and things like that. And I forgot. I thought he was in the film, but I wasn't sure. And then when we did this, oh yeah, he is in the film. And we had already shown. I mean, that was when I'd already seen the film, and so it was very interesting that we had him. But it was but one of the things that wanted you to give more information to us about is how did you as you were working on the connecting talking to people about the revolution and the uprising, how were you getting the information? What was the process of getting information? Because a lot of times people don't hear things as they unravel. They hear it after the fact, or if they hear it at all. But how are you connecting with people on the ground as things are unfolding?
Yeah. So for me, it was all on social media mostly. I would get the news from other people on social media, and then I would do my best to share it on my platform and to just echo that. So we had connection with our family a little bit, also getting news from them then. But mostly for me, it was through social media and talking to other people, and then just reposting what has been said and just echoing that. So that was my goal in utilizing my platform on social media.
Yeah, I would definitely. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. No, you.
Piggyback off what Khadija just said. Like you said, our news outlet was not CNN, it wasn't BBC. It was generally our peers. It was our friends, our families, our aunts. It was people experiencing it there, and that's how we got our information from each other, honestly. So yeah, even though there were periods of complete media blackout, we tried our best to still stay connected.
And has that network still ongoing today as we speak, 2 years on after the revolution? Is it still the same process, or is different ways of communicating?
I would say social media has kept us together.
Definitely.
It's definitely kept us connected. And now that there's, less restrictions as before, people feel more free to say things. Because before, when we got some sources from people, we'd have to keep it anonymous, for instance. But now it's like, so-and-so said this. So-and-so said this. Because I know, Khadija, you probably had similar experiences that I would get information from them. But I can't say who said what and who their source is, We had to protect people's safety. That was a priority.
Yeah, Khadija, you wanted to say something on it? Sorry, Khadija.
No, I was just agreeing. I was agreeing with Bayad that it was very difficult making sure that we get the news out while not jeopardizing people's safety on the grounds in Sudan, because it was just very dangerous to speak out during that time and to get the message out. So we had to keep a lot of things anonymous and to ensure that we're protecting our people in Sudan as well.
Yeah, and actually, it's mentioned that in the film was Sinkane. I'm pronouncing it like a Southern African as I am, but Sinkane was talking about how his father, came into exile, and for many years he would, at the beginning he was writing a lot, and then he stopped, and then all of a sudden he started writing more as things were happening, but I guess there was always this fear, especially during the height of the al-Bashir regime, of people getting in trouble if you speak out, or getting somebody at home in trouble because you're speaking out, even though you're safe in the diaspora. And it's very interesting. But and it's interesting. I wanted to expand a bit about this issue on this. You in the diaspora, working with people on the ground. Did they feel that you were? How did they feel about that? Did they think that you were kind of Johnny come latelys, or people who are in the comfort of somewhere and trying to be leaders or trying to be dictating what's going on? What was that relationship like with it's always, there's always this tension sometimes of somebody who is at home and somebody who's in the diaspora. If you can expand a bit about that, on that relationship. I don't know who wants to start.
Did you want to start with that? It's an excellent question.
Did you? I don't know if you heard me, Khadija.
I can start off. I think it's an excellent question, and it's something that all as community organizers in the diaspora had to keep in mind, that we are trying to echo their voice. We are not their voice. So that is something that was one of our biggest goals, was to make sure we kept giving them the lead.
You can start on that. I'm still trying to collect my answer.
Thoughts? Okay, no problem. Yeah. So she's answering now. Yeah.
It's all right. So we kind of just made sure to echo their voices, provide them the money, the resources. So if they needed something, we would send it to them. We'd be like, what do you need? Do you need food? Do you need this? Do you need this? We weren't sending them, you should be doing this. You should stop doing this, because that is so, that's such a privileged thing that we can do. They're the ones risking their lives in comparison to us. I think that was our job from the diaspora, was to spread the word. Not to take over anyway.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, like for me, there was also almost like a sense of guilt that I am here in the comfort of my home, and I am like, trying to be a part of this revolution for a long time. It was hard for me to accept that, yes, like we were still a part of this revolution from afar, because it's a sensitive area. You don't want to go in and have this white savior complex coming in, and you're like, I know what you guys need to do on the floor, on the grounds in Sudan. But also, like, we wanted to also echo the voices of the Sudani people in Sudan. And so I felt kind of guilty, not even going to lie, like even just echoing their voices, because I was like, it feels like I don't have that right to speak out on this. And so it was a journey for me to even like accept that I am a part of this revolution from afar, though it's not, I'm not there, I'm still a part of it. And so like Bayada said, we just had to make sure that we are not telling them what to do, rather just like getting the message and projecting it and echoing it, because unfortunately, they're not able to do that in Sudan. They weren't able to do that in Sudan after the internet was shut off. And so that was our privilege here in being in the diaspora. We had the internet, and the social media is an extremely powerful tool in revolutions, in modern day revolutions, and in getting the message out. So, you know, I would have felt even more guilty had I not used my privilege in having access to social media to echo their voices.
And so, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I really wanted to just touch on like that word guilt. It was something that we were carrying, you know, like survivor's guilt. You know, my family immigrated here to Sudan as refugees. When we left, my father was a political figure and like a freedom fighter in Eastern Sudan. So government wanted to execute him, so he had to flee the country. And I didn't meet my father until years later as a child, because he had to literally flee the country. You know, carrying that 25 years of just being in the country and being afraid to use my voice. It was an incredible moment for a lot of our family members to finally be able to do something, because like us, we had to leave, you know? But yeah, I definitely could relate to Sinkane's point, Khadijah's point about guilt. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm going, and also speaking about identity, and it kind of connected to guilt. There's what's in Mariam G. She's one of the poets in the film, and she was talking about how she said this. Sometimes she feels she's told that she's too American to be Sudanese, and she's too Sudanese to be American. Yeah. I don't know. And the film kind of touches on this about the dual identity. Being whether you're born in Sudan and came here very young, or born here, and the double consciousness that people you must have. How complicated is that for you to maneuver as you're based here, and it's somewhat related to what we're saying about.
Yeah, I mean, identity is a very complex topic for me personally. Something I've always struggled with is like, where do I fit in, right? Like I was born in Sudan, but like a lot of my life, I spent it outside of Sudan. I was raised in Saudi Arabia, then immigrated to America at the age of 8. So for me, I always kind of struggled finding a place. Like, you know, if I'm either way too African or I'm too Arab, right? And it's like, okay, you know, I'm not accepted wholeheartedly by the Africans, nor am I accepted wholeheartedly by the Arabs. So where do I fit in? And so for me, I couldn't fit in with like African-American Black people either, because being Black in America is a different culture as well, and couldn't fit in with white people. So honestly, I started hanging out with Asians. I started hanging out with like Desis, Pakistanis, Indians, and stuff like that. So, but it was still that sense of not belonging, really like was just overwhelming. So this revolution and kind of me being a part of it from afar gave me a sense of that reclamation of identity. You know, for the first time, I was kind of very proud to proclaim my Sudanese-ness, regardless if I am accepted by Arabs or Africans or white people or Black people or Asians. It didn't matter at that point. I was just saying, I'm just Sudanese. That's an identity that is enough on its own. You know what I mean? I am all of those identities at one, and I don't need to scatter myself into different boxes to fit in. I could claim all of them at once and still be proud of that. And that is okay. And that's the beautiful complexity of identity, is that it's not a single thing. It's not a monolith. You can have different parts that make up the puzzle piece that you are, because we are not simple creatures. We are complex creatures with complex histories and identities, and they all intersect and merge together. So for me, the Sudanese Revolution was a powerful lesson in reclaiming myself, my history, and being proud of it, even if I am not accepted by the world.
Yeah, great, excellent. And we have a question from an audience member, and they say that what in you as artist drives you to connect your art with activism, and why is that important?
I think once again, it's one of those privileges that we have, because art is more palatable to people. It gets the message across. You know, people don't always want to watch a documentary or read an article about Sudan, but they will listen to my 2-3 minute poem, and it will provide that same educational value, and it would also make it more personable to people. You know, it once they hear a story behind the revolution. You know, I have a lot of pieces about my father's experience being a political figure. So I have so many poems about that. You know, it's not just a statistic anymore. It's not just a random person from in the middle of Sudan no one's ever heard of. It's me, Bayadzit. It's your friend. It's your coworker. It's Khadija. You know, we make it more personable. We make it something that people can hold on to. And definitely the experience of art and revolution and identity isn't just an issue within the Sudanese community. There are so many different communities who are experiencing similar issues as we are.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like art is such a beautiful and powerful tool when used for the sake of activism.
Absolutely.
Khadija?
I agree with Bayadzit on that. And for me personally, I kind of stumbled on spoken word poetry. The story of how I learned about what poetry is happened, honestly, just because I was doing this competition called Mist. My brother was competing in it, and I just wanted to compete against my brother. I didn't know what spoken word poetry is. I Googled it. I was like, what is spoken word poetry? And I watched all of these videos, and I just felt like this feeling that I've never felt before seeing people perform. It touched me. And like what Bayada just said, the word that she said stood out to me. You know, it's an experience. Art is an experience. And in watching those videos, I felt that experience, and something in me wanted to put my own experiences on paper and share that with the world. And so poetry, spoken word poetry, in a way kind of became therapy for me. It became a healing space for me, and it became a way for me to kind of decompress and take out all of the pain and the trauma and just take it out of me and share it with the world and let them experience that as well. And in experiencing that, I felt like I connected with people better, and people connected better with me. And then something also about performing, is so beautiful to me. For me, when I'm on stage and I am performing and it's dead silent and I am pouring my heart out, and as I'm sharing this experience, I'm a part of the experience as well, and I'm going through it and people listen, that is such a powerful feeling for me, that I feel heard. And I think for a lot of us, we want to feel heard and understood, and that's only a human desire. And so when you tie that with activism and you share your experience with that, it becomes even more magnified in how powerful it is. And so I kind of just randomly discovered that, you know, when you tie the two together, you can really move mountains with that and really move people. And that's the key.
Fantastic. And actually, on that note, wanted to see if you were able to share your poem with us. Particularly
Sure.
the one that starts the film with, and then it ends it off, but the full version.
Sure. 1 second. Give me 1 second. Let me just adjust my area, and so I can pull up the poem as well and perform it. Okay, so the piece that I performed in the film, it's called Between, and it talks about what we were just talking about, identity and belonging, and the struggle of being between American and Sudanese and trying to find land in both. So I'll just go ahead and perform. Bismillah. Ya Azza, I still hate water. This past summer, I just went back to Sudan after 12 years of being gone, after 12 years of trying to figure out where I belong, after 12 years of trying to hold on to my motherland, to my Arabic tongue, my culture, and what I remember of Sudan, trying to hold on to the slowly dissipating memories of home. I didn't know what to expect. Didn't know if my family would accept or reject me. Didn't know if I was still Sudanese enough. We land in the airport in Khartoum, and I rush to the line with a sign above it that says citizens. My eyes glistening with tears of joy that I'm finally back home, or where I thought is home, back to where I was born. And when I got to the counter, I was encountered by an immediate letter of rejection. He asked to see my Sudanese passport to prove my identity, but it didn't dawn on me that my passport was no longer green. Rather, it was navy blue when stamped on it is American dream. He looked at me and said, "This isn't the line where you belong." He then pointed to the line with a sign above it that said, "Foreigners." I wanted to scream, "No, you're wrong. In America, I also don't belong. So where am I supposed to go when in both lands I can't claim home?" Memories immediately flooded back to that one time when I was 6 years old. And when my cousins suggested we go swim in the body of water that gave birth to us. I remember darkness all around me when my foot slipped and I fell underneath, struggling to breathe, gasping for air, hoping someone hears my silent screams. No, I'm falling. No, I'm sinking. No, I'm drowning. I was drowning in the Nile, and now I'm still drowning in denial of which identities I'm supposed to be. Drowning in denial of what society tells me. Trying to swim between American and Sudanese, between two lands that were never meant to meet, between chaos and peace, between Nubian mountains and the Statue of Liberty, between two cultures, two ties, between two mountains that slowly collide, between Arabic tongue and black skin, between Alif Bata and ABC, between black dress and white tobe, between pizza and عصيدة بملاح روب, between لا كده عيب and no that's okay, between واب علي and oh my god, between Wardi and Tupac, between WhatsApp calls and TV screens, between immigrant and citizen, between Arab and not Arab enough, between African and not African enough, between Muslim and not Muslim enough, between lost and found, between somewhere and nowhere, drowning between water and air, because how can I breathe when in both lands I am suffocating? تعرفي يا عزة أنا لسه خايفة من الموية يا عزة. I hate water till this day يا عزة. I'm tired of drowning in between يا عزة. With you I'm yearning to be يا عزة. Help me. The waves stopped. I find myself now floating in the Nile. My eyelids felt heavy. I couldn't open them, but I knew my body swayed with a sound. I tried to listen and hear that sound, but somehow my ears were still underwater. I can only hear muffled scream and muffled voices. I can only see suppressed dreams and vibrant darkness. The more the sound grew louder, the more that I tried to lift my head above water. And after years, I decided to just let go. Stop struggling, stop resisting, stop fighting. I let the waves guide me. I let the tides of change take me. My eyes and body all weighed heavy, but I still moved steady. My body moved, my body swayed. My body moved to the shore that now didn't seem too far away. The voices of children, voices of women, voices of Kandaka's future, past and present, the zagrutas of my habobas, the melody of hope, the lullaby of resistance cradling me back and forth, the voices of those who have awakened the revolution, slowly bringing me to shore. Ya Azza, I am so close. They try to tie bricks to my ankles to sink me, to stop me, to silence me. But what they didn't know is that you can try to drown bodies, but you can't drown truth. Because I am still here today. We are still here today. أنا أفريقي وأنا سوداني، أنا أفريقي وأنا سوداني، أنا أفريقي وأنا سوداني. I opened my eyes only to find my cousin pulling me out of the water. He held me near, told me you were gone for 12 years, but I'm now glad you're here, Ya Azza. I still hate water till this day. But this was necessary to getting me to my destination, because what I now understand is that water connects and it does not separate. Time doesn't run, but rather it waits. You see, just because I'm in between two bodies of water doesn't mean I can't have two shores. And just because I'm in between American and Sudanese doesn't mean I'm not enough for both, because you see, in between sinking, I learned how to rise. In between drowning, I learned how to float. In between American, I learned how to be Sudanese. And in between suffocating, I learned how to truly breathe. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Perfect. Nice. In between is the theme of that. Between.
Yes.
And perfect. Perfect poem for the film Revolution from Afar, and also documenting the Sudanese diaspora community here in the U.S. as they unpack the revolution that's taking place. And I wanted to also to find out whether the film has been shown in some way in Sudan. It has been shown in Sudan. What were the reviews like?
I'm not sure that Bentley would have the better answer for that.
Okay, yeah.
I'm certain that it was screened there.
But it was okay.
A film festival, Sudan's film festival. Yeah.
When did they screen it?
I want to say the end of last year.
Oh, okay. Wow, fantastic. And yeah, I was trying to see what was the reaction from people there of the film.
I hope good.
Yeah.
Bentley would have the answer for you.
Yeah, Bentley. Yeah. Bentley would probably have the better answer.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Khadija back, or I think yeah, she's so we'll get back to Khadija in a minute. But you're working with in your field. You're doing public health.
Yes.
For masters in public health, and you're working with children with disabilities. Do you see the connection of what you're working and the education that you're pursuing also connected to the activism that you're involved in? I'll start with Bahedia and then Khadija as well. Khadija did kind of expand on it a bit, but I'd like to hear your role as well, and how art and how it connects with the work that you do.
For sure. So currently I'm pursuing my master's in public health at Johns Hopkins University. And the reason why I got interested into public health in general is when I visited the hospitals in Sudan. And I realized the lack of resources, the health infrastructure, prevention measures, all these things that are essential to public health don't really exist in Sudan, or they do, but there just isn't enough resources for it. So that is why I pursued public health in order to get my experience, my resources here in the States, and then my lifetime goal is to return to Sudan and be able to provide more resources and collaborations with healthcare professionals in Sudan. So that's my long-term goal, and so I just have a passion in general for health disparities and supporting people's environments so they can have better health outcomes, which relate to lack of nutrition, clean water, medication, smoking, all of the different health factors that we see in Sudan. And a lot of people are suffering from preventable illnesses in Sudan. So that is how I see my long-term career goals of working in the health field in relation to Sudan. So it's definitely, everything is connected at the end of the day. So I'm glad to be able to be balancing the arts, the poetry, the education, and also working in a hospital.
I know, Khadija, you did talk a little bit about art and the importance of art earlier on, but I was going to ask you directly, your major, political science, how do you see that art playing a role in your education, and yeah, how, and would it be important? Would it be a critical part of your educational process?
Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, studying political science and with art, coupling that with political science, I think understanding how politics operate and how government works is important. And I believe that, you know, I was having a conversation with my father. My father was actually the one to push me to pursue politics. And even, you know, my objective with politics is that I wanted to expand that into studying international affairs. And I want to go back to Sudan, and I want to become a part of the government in Sudan, and really I think, you know, governments can be really corrupt, especially the one that we had previously in Sudan. But if a government does it correctly, then it can really benefit its people. So my dad, he was really politically engaged in Sudan, and even here in the diaspora, he is part of this party. It's called Hizb al-Ummah. And so my dad is super involved in politics as well. And so from a young age, I would spend many days and many days just like watching the news with him. I was like 5 years old, and my favorite channel was Al Jazeera. So I would sit and talk politics with my dad when I was like 8, you know what I mean? And so he would always push me to understand government and world affairs, and how everything, you know, comes and it merges together, and it's all important, it all connects. And so when I decided that I wanted to study political science, my dad was pushing me to not only learn about politics in order to utilize that in Sudan, but also here in America, because my dad would continuously affirm me that I'm both Sudanese and American, and that even in America, it's good for us to be civically engaged, because this is home too, whether we accept it or not. And so he's my biggest supporter in pursuing politics and working in government. Eventually, I worked with the governor of Michigan for a little bit. And I just saw that we need more people like us in those spaces as well, because there just isn't enough. And like Bayadir is in the healthcare field, and it's really important to have people there, but it's also important to have people in journalism, in politics, in all of these other fields that are not usually pushed for us to pursue. So I, you know, merged together my political science with my art, because I understand why both are really important. And I want to really encourage more people to pursue politics and government, and to really be civically engaged, both abroad and here at home.
Speaking of politics, just following up, what is the current situation now? What are you hearing about 2 years on? How is the mood in the country, and also in the diaspora about the current situation?
Yeah, I mean, from what I'm hearing directly from my family, they're still very unhappy with the administration that's in Sudan now. There's a lot of economical difficulties. Prices continue to skyrocket. There's gas shortages. There's still bread shortages. There's, you know, not much has gotten better. And there was even recently protests again sparking up in Sudan. My uncle was in Sudan at the time, and he was just right now telling me about how like the streets were shut down with protesters in Khartoum. And so the climate in Sudan is still, there's a lot of unrest. And rightfully so, because this government that promised to be different from the previous dictatorship and to really be from the people, of the people, serving the people, it didn't work out that way. And it's disappointing, it's disheartening But you know, they continue to push. Like I said, my family is heavily involved in politics. My uncle, he is actually the governor of North Kordofan, and so South Kordofan, I believe. I'm not sure, but I want to have conversations with him to better understand what is going on the ground there. But there's a lot of still bloodshed, a lot of unrest, and a lot of difficulties on our people in Sudan.
Yeah, I just heard that there were demonstrations because of the I think they instituted an IMF policy where they got rid of the subsidies on the fuel, and so people have been demonstrating on that as well. And this is a few weeks ago. This,
Yep.
and yeah, and then again, there's also been this issue about the role of the military, because right now you have the sovereign council, which is made up of some military, civilian. But do you see that the military is still too influential in the process of governing? Bahedia, maybe you can start with this as well.
Yeah, I think, like you said, I think they can be too controlling. If you need to have guns in order to control a people or lead a people, I don't think you're in the position to be a leader. You know, leaders and presidents and influential people do not need guns, and it needs to be a more collaborative effort with civilians and with other public public officials in general. And I do think the government who is in power should be through a voted democratic system, and not through nepotism or through winning your way to the top or scaring people with guns, because that's what happened in the past. The government controlled people through violence and restrictions and through prisons. You know what I mean? We should have a democratic system. Democratic.
I don't know, Khadija. I don't know if you wanted to weigh in on it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I don't think violence has any place to be in like civic government. People are not heard, you know, they're not animals. They are not to be controlled and, you know, with violence. So violence is just not the language of progress. And I think the military influence that continues to exist in Sudan is really hindering the process and the progress of the revolution. And it's kind of, like I said, very disheartening, because that same military that still continues to govern is the same military that spilled the blood of our cousins and our families in Sudan. So how can you look at your oppressors and they're still in government, in power, and expect an effective and an efficient government to come out of that truly cares about its people? I think that needs to be dismantled, and it needs to have more of a democratic leadership, like Bayadr said, that engages both, you know, the people who are leading the revolution, and give them a place in that government to really be effective, because the military has no place in it.
Yeah. It reminds me of one of the chants that they had during the revolution. It was along the lines of they said it in Arabic, but it was along the lines of the revolution is only beginning. And that was even towards the end of the year, which was one of my favorite chants that were said. And like some of these people who are still in power are war criminals, you know. International Criminal Court still has bond on their head, you know. So I do not think these people need to be in power. They have, you know, committed violent atrocities in Sudan, Khartoum, and Darfur. We have in South Sudan, we have, you know, decades worth of violence, and these people need to be held accountable, not just taken down from their places of power, but also held accountable in the justice system.
Absolutely, Bayadr. And like the violence never stopped. It continues and it has been ongoing. And so once we acknowledge that and address that and stop the violence that's especially happening and continues to happen in Darfur and has been happening, we're not going anywhere. And that's why they chanted the revolution is only now beginning. And it's like they said, it didn't end when Omar al-Bashir stepped down. That was just like the face of the whole, it was the tip of the iceberg. And there needs still a lot of people in power that need to be uprooted and removed from office.
Speaking of the people who are leading the revolution, one of the things that was very glaring was that it was a lot of them were women. You saw not just the face of it, but actually planning it, organizing it, and some of the earliest demonstrations and protests were led by women. The ones which were not televised, even the ones which started like in December of 2018. And if I don't know if you can expand on that as well, because that's one thing. There's a stereotype about women in politics in Africa in general, and if you could expand a bit more about the role of how women were critical in this revolution.
Can go ahead, Bad.
Vadia, you want to say?
Yeah, I can start with that one. My family, we have an azan in the house, so I don't know if you guys will hear it in the background. I'm not going to apologize for it. It's an azan that's playing for prayer, call to prayer.
Yes, call to prayer. So, sorry,
yes.
we took it away from the prayer. I'm sorry.
No worries. So yeah, I am not surprised at all the role Sudanese women had in the revolution. It wasn't a surprising thing at all. They have suffered the most under this regime. Violence, sexual abuse, sexism. They have been held back from so many different things. So I'm not surprised that they stood up during this revolution and demanded justice. I saw it within my own family members. I had a cousin of mine who was detained in a prison in a jail for a couple months for protesting. To the point where we were genuinely concerned. We didn't know where she was. She was brutally beat during the massacre. I had another aunt in Kassala, Sudan, who was beaten and tortured in a hospital, in a jail, until she lost her baby. That's how severe her torture was, all because she was protesting and an active community member and community organizer. So I'm not surprised that women took a role. It's just a stereotype, and there was no truth to it. So glad that people know now Sudanese women have been leading, and even if they don't get the credit for it.
Absolutely.
Khadija? Yeah.
Absolutely. Honestly, it was very empowering for me seeing women leading this revolution. And like Bad said, I wasn't surprised. It's usually women who are in the front line of change and revolutions, even like if they're not given credit for it. But for me, it was empowering because it kind of allowed me to take a look at the women in my own family and realizing that I really do come from a lineage of matriarchs, powerful women who are allowed, who not even allowed, that's not even the word. They don't even need to ask the permission to really take charge and to be in the front lines. And so for me, this was a beautiful thing to see women wrapped in the taupe and in the front lines. And it kind of inspired me to also do that and to be proud of my taupe as a symbol of just power, right? And the stereotype that women are oppressed and they don't have a place in the revolution is false. And the Sudani revolution really proved that, and it showed that. And the proof of that is the symbol that became world known of the Sudani revolution was the woman standing on top of the car, chanting with a crowd and wearing the tobe and looking like a beautiful kandaka. And so we realized that women have always been there. They have always been doing this work, and they have been always in the front lines, but only now were they only shown as symbols and given credit for it. But it makes me very proud to be a Sudani woman and to recognize my own power and to be inspired by the lineage that I come from.
Yeah, and actually to expand on what you're saying, that now people at least get know this. Where can people get the most accurate information? I mean, apart from, I know you have direct family connections, but what are some of the other sources? If people don't know somebody from Sudan, where can people get information which is beyond the headlines, beyond the sensational, but gives the nuances, the history, the perspective on the country, what's going on.
I would recommend just starting with social media at this point. Unfortunately, I don't have a book to recommend. There are actually, I'm not gonna lie, there are, but I would just recommend starting with social media, following people within your field. For instance, if you're real interested in art, I recommend following Sudanese artists. If you're interested in the engineering or the infrastructure or the health, following doctors and physicians and engineers from Sudan. So I think you should just start with the people. I don't have a specific organization that I just want to say off the top of my head right now. Just, start looking at those hashtags, looking at those Sudanese reporters, like Yusra Al-Baghra or Sada. Sada, I forgot her name. But
Sada is a news agency, or
no, Sada. Her Instagram name is BS on Blast.
BS on Blast.
Really, yeah. So it's one of those, like, you follow the people, because sometimes organizations or the news channels can be a little biased if they're still based in Sudan, unfortunately, due to the government restrictions and censorship and things like that. So I just recommend following community organizers, people who are based there, more grassroots. And I can give you, if anybody wants to reach out to me, Yourbaya, Yourbay on Instagram and on Twitter and Facebook and all that. So I can provide you more connections, a doctor on the ground, a physician, or a therapist, or a painter, you name it, I can find you a student to follow.
And I hope we can type your Instagram at the end so that people can get it properly. But if we can say it again, the address again.
Yourbaya.com.
Yeah, and that's YO.
Just Twitter, Instagram, yeah. And then Khadija, if you want to put yours in the chat also.
Okay, yeah.
There we go.
Oh, there it is. Yourbaya on Instagram, yeah.
Mine is just the Khadija Mo, TheKhadegamo. But like Bayad just said, it's honestly, I think it really sucks that I can't think of like one source that's like.
Well, I guess multiple sources.
Right, but like, I think unfortunately there isn't like an easily accessible place to get all of the news and the information, unless people really make that, And so for right now, the best bet is to really connect with the Sudani people who are informed on this on social media. Like I said, social media is a powerful place and a platform where you can really educate yourself by meeting different people and asking the questions. So I'm here too, if anyone does have any questions or wants to learn more about the revolution, about the history of Sudan, all of that, until I really hope that eventually we do have a platform where we can really point people to and go and tell them, like, this is where you go to get all of the updates, daily updates on what's going on in Sudan, as well as learn about the history. But for right now, we have Revolution from Afar as well. It's a good starting point, this film, to kind of give you an introduction and an overview of this revolution from afar that we were a part of. So that's why this film is really important, because it does provide documentation for this very historical revolution, and to really educate people on it and have it accessible to the public.
And also the most of the artists in the film people can follow, and a lot of them are connected to the things that are going on the ground. At least what I've seen of the film as well, and what I've heard of the artists, they seem to be very much connected to the ins and outs of the situation. So, Baidia, you were about to say something?
No, I was just agreeing. Thank you.
Thank
you so much, Khadija, for that beautiful conclusion, and for the organizations who are hosting and sponsoring us today.
Oh, we haven't quite finished, because I was going to ask I was thinking, but the other, I mean, one of and the other news source that people should be looking at is also Al Jazeera. Which unfortunately, if you're living in the United States, is not on cable because the people don't want it, but you can still get it on internet, and that's it covers a lot on countries like Sudan, and much more so than in the other major news networks. and that's so you can get opinion pieces and news items. And for instance, the strikes, the demonstrations we were talking about just a few minutes ago, you don't see it anywhere else, but it's on Al Jazeera. They talked about that and all those demonstrations. And I wanted to find out from Badia before we conclude, if you would like to share a poem for us.
Yeah, I can definitely share a poem, and I will keep going. With the theme of being a child of the diaspora. My poem is titled Secondhand Smoke from my debut poetry book that was released last year, Secondhand Smoke. So I'll get on started. About 54,000 people die from secondhand smoke a year. Some suggest it may be worse than firsthand. I didn't live through wars. I am the echo of my Sudanese lineage. I did not jump from country to country not knowing where home was, but I do know what smoke does. My family, all 6 of us, were chased out of our country. The government wanted my father dead. His scars are white, symbolizes peace on our flag. But the government has a master's in false propaganda. Instead, Sudan is not in peace, but in 2 pieces. I wasn't raised on fairy tale stories about Cinderella, Rapunzel, and Snow White. I was ignited on biographies of my people, how my father resisted dictators, how my great-grandfather fought imperialism, how he was friends with the great queen. I was raised to follow my deen. I was raised on what my parents had seen. My parents are my suppliers, addicting me to these stories like nicotine. Who needed to hear about superheroes saving the day and helping the poor when the only thing that saved my family was an American passport? Every room in my home I walk into, I'm engulfed into a thick fog. In my living room, I'm reminded that's where families gather for funerals. I've been to too many. Air is engulfed, but tears always find a way. I don't know if we cry for the lost soul or the fact Sudan is on fire, mourning for the soul, but Sudan is dying to them too. Smog lingers in these rooms. You can't quit trauma cold turkey. An American identity can't shield you from the gloom. Whoever walks into my home, we offer them chai, biscuits, a lighter, and an ashtray. They kindle a few cigarettes and leave thick fumes to the point the blood of Sudanese genocides always fragrance my clothing. I don't have a first-hand experience, but I do know I will always be the kid in the room that smells like smoke. How many do you think died in Sudan? I no longer blame them. Smoke is meant to be exhaled eventually.
Thank you. And then, I don't know, finally, I don't know, for all of you, what advice would you give to us who are in the African diaspora, who may feel disconnected from the continent, and we might not have direct relationship with people on the continent? What advice would you give to people of understanding Sudan and not just Sudan, but other countries in the continent, and how they can understand this?
Go ahead, Badia.
Yes.
I'm thinking. You're asking good questions.
No answer is wrong. No.
I think when you said they feel disconnected, I just want to remind them that they are connected. You know, it might just not be the way we are connected. You know, there isn't one way to be African. There isn't one version of Sudanese, and I would say the same for people in the diaspora. There's nobody's more African than another per se. You know, we want to embrace everybody. We love everyone's experiences, and the African diaspora experience is not monolith. So I might have a specific grandmother, someone else might not, but that doesn't make their experience any less valid than mine. So I would just suggest starting by visiting, reading books, reading documentaries, you know, engaging with the grassroots organizations in your community. You know, wherever you go, you'll find a Nigerian community, you'll find a Sudanese community. And I bet if you just showed up to an event and just introduce yourself, you know, people of the community are very welcoming and hospitable. So just personal connections, I believe, is the most powerful in connections.
Thank you, Baidea, for those great words. And also, Khadija.
Yeah, that was beautiful, Bad. I don't know how much that day. But I think my advice for the African diaspora in general, I think for so long we've been kind of made to be taught that, you know, Africa is like one thing. It's one country. When that is not further from the truth. Africa is a continent. There's so many different countries, and there's so much different diversity within each country. Like Baya just said, we are not a monolith. So my advice is for us Africans to really reclaim our Africanness and to take pride in that, and to remember that civilization started from Africa. We come from a lineage of royalty. We come from kings and queens and empires, and that we have so much to offer to ourselves and to the world. You know, there is so much to be proud of in being African, and the world has tried to make us hate ourselves for so long. So our first step is that first love, that first that self-love, that appreciation, that understanding of our history and where we come from, and realizing that we are more connected than we know, that, you know, in being connected to one another, we have a history that is shared between all of our countries, and that there is great pride in being African. So that's the first step for me. I think if we can't love ourselves and our history, and if we can't appreciate where we come from, it will be difficult to see a vision for where we're heading.
Thank you very much, Khadija, for those great words.
I cannot echo that any better.
Thank you.
Any better. My sisters, this has been, and my brother, this has
Thank
been
you.
This has been very enlightening.
Yes.
And it's just something I hope we can really get out so folks can really see this post discussion, in addition to the Revolution from Afar, the film. And one of the things, I don't think really people connect with the word revolution. Mm-hmm. Yes, it is change, but at the offset of violence, of deaths, of sacrifice, and so we must connect our people in the diaspora and really start to stop isolating ourselves, stop thinking that we're just American, you know, and really embrace, learn, and educate ourselves beyond what the media and what is communicated to us here in America. So yeah, films are critical. Searching films that speak. Bring everybody in, Shawande. Films that speak to different cultures, to different subjects, to different topics is so important to expand our minds and connect. Again, you said it so eloquently. Africa is not a country; it is a continent, and so we really need to learn about the different countries on the continent and embrace what they're going through and understand and learn. Educate ourselves.
Watch the films like The Revolution from Afar.
And this I'm not sure how people can see it. I'm going to connect with Bentley and post that. But I know that you all there's a Facebook following and there's social media following of Revolution from Afar, so you can follow and track it and see where you can. I think getting it out, renting it in different groups and showing it and having discussions and dialogue really expands our knowledge about what's happening. So on that note, I want to thank you all, and Louisa.
Thank you very much.
Were wonderful.
Thank you for
this discussion. I want to encourage everyone to follow San Antonio Black International Film Festival. We have a wonderful festival coming up, focusing on women, stars in cinema, phenomenal Black creatives. Just hearing about you all talking about the women warriors on the front lines and the organizing has been very encouraging. And so I want everybody to follow us and connect with us on social media. We have a festival that runs virtually this year. Next year we'll go back physical, but we run September 30th through October 3rd at sabif.tv. Continue to follow what's happening with Revolution from Afar and Sudan and Chad and Haiti and Palestine. Everything that is happening, people are protesting and demanding change, necessary change. On that note, again, we thank you all for watching. Continue to follow us and have a blessed rest of your week. Thank you.